Most people imagine oil sitting in vast underground lakes waiting to be tapped, like pushing a straw into a giant milkshake. But it's almost completely wrong. In reality, if you drilled several kilometers into one of the world's largest oil fields, you probably wouldn't find a single underground lake. Instead, you'd hit what looks like an ordinary piece of rock, hard, dense, solid. If oil is trapped inside solid rock, how does anyone get it out? Because engineers don't actually pump oil out. They have to convince the rock to let go. Getting it out requires several different solutions, and each one creates a new problem. The drill has finally reached the oil-bearing rock. Thousands of meters below the surface, a narrow steel-lined well now connects the reservoir to the outside world. If the popular image of underground oil lakes were true, this would be the moment everything came rushing upward. But instead, almost nothing happens. Not because the oil isn't there, but because the rock refuses to give it up. To understand why, we need to zoom in, way in, not meters, not centimeters, not even millimeters. We're going to shrink until a single grain of sandstone looks as large as a mountain. At this scale, the rock no longer appears solid. Instead, it looks like an intricate maze filled with billions of microscopic openings. These tiny spaces are called pores, and they're where the oil has been sitting for millions of years. But here's the catch. Those pores aren't wide open rooms. They're connected by incredibly narrow passageways called pore throats, tiny bottlenecks that make it difficult for fluids to move. Picture pulling a thick milkshake through a straw barely wider than a wire. The milkshake is there, but getting it through such a tiny opening takes far more effort. Underground, oil faces a similar problem: porosity and permeability. They sound similar, but they solve two completely different problems. Porosity answers one question: how much oil can the rock hold? Permeability answers another: how easily can that oil actually move? Think about a sponge. It can absorb a lot of water because it has high porosity. Now imagine filling that sponge with glue. The empty spaces still exist, but suddenly nothing can flow through them. That is what low permeability is like. A rock formation may hold plenty of oil while producing very little, simply because its microscopic channels are too narrow or poorly connected. Finding oil, therefore, isn't enough. The oil must also have a route to escape. It's pressure. Oil starts flowing when the well creates a lower pressure route through the reservoir. The driving force may come from expanding gas, water pushing in from the surrounding formation, gravity, or several mechanisms working together. When the well opens a lower pressure path, that stored energy starts moving fluids toward it. Reservoir fluids move toward the well because the pressure there is lower. Like gas escaping a pressurized bottle, reservoir fluids move toward the lower pressure well. The reservoir is simply equalizing pressure, and the oil moves with that flow. For a while, this natural pressure is enough. Oil flows into the well. Production begins. But with every barrel brought to the surface, the reservoir loses some of the energy driving the flow. It's like slowly letting the air out of an inflated balloon. At first, the change is barely noticeable. Then the flow weakens. Eventually, the pressure that once drove the oil is no longer strong enough. If nature can no longer push the oil, how do engineers replace the force that was lost? The reservoir is not out of oil. It is out of the energy that was moving it. Artificial lift can help move fluid up the well, but a larger pump cannot create pathways that do not exist inside the rock. So, engineers changed the question. Instead of asking, how do we pull the oil out? Engineers asked, what if we push it? Water flooding. At first glance, pumping water underground sounds completely backwards. Why would anyone inject water into an oil field? Wouldn't that just dilute the oil? That is not what happens. Instead, engineers drill a second set of wells. These wells do not produce oil. They inject large volumes of water into the reservoir, As the water advances through the porous rock, it pushes the oil ahead of it, forcing it toward nearby production wells. For the first time in years, the trapped oil begins moving again. It's an elegant solution, but it isn't a perfect one. Because underground, nothing is perfectly uniform. Fluids move easily through some parts of the rock and barely move through others. Imagine pouring water onto a dry sidewalk. The water doesn't spread evenly. It finds the easiest paths first. The exact same thing happens inside an oil reservoir. Instead of sweeping through every pore, the injected water often discovers natural highways where the rock is more permeable. It races through those channels, reaches the production well, and leaves entire sections of the reservoir untouched. Those bypassed zones can still hold large volumes of oil that never reach the well. It's called sweep efficiency. The goal isn't just to inject water. It's to make that water contact as much of the reservoir as possible. Because every pocket the water misses is another pocket of oil left underground. This is why designing an oil field isn't just about drilling wells. It's about understanding the hidden architecture of the rock itself. Engineers analyze seismic surveys, core samples, pressure data, and computer models to predict how fluids will move thousands of meters below the surface. They are essentially trying to solve a gigantic underground maze without ever seeing it directly. Even with carefully planned water flooding, another problem remains. Some rocks are so tight that water cannot move through them efficiently at all. Not because the oil isn't there, not because the pressure is too low, but because the pathways connecting the pores are almost non-existent. Imagine trying to force honey through a stack of tightly packed coffee filters. That's the challenge engineers faced in formations like shale. The oil was real, the wells were drilled, the pressure had been restored, and yet the rock still refused to let go. Until engineers realized that instead of searching for better pathways, they could create new ones. In shale, a vertical well can pass through oil-rich rock and still collect very little because the pores are barely connected. That's why simply drilling a vertical well often wasn't enough. So engineers stopped asking how to improve the flow. Instead, they changed the rock itself. The first breakthrough came before any rock was fractured. Instead of drilling straight down, engineers learned to turn the drill sideways. Modern directional equipment guides the drill bit through a gradual underground turn, changing the bore from vertical to nearly horizontal. Rather than touching only a short vertical interval, the well can run through the formation for kilometers. That alone exposes far more of the oil-bearing rock. But even with a longer well, the oil still needs a way to reach it. That's where hydraulic fracturing comes in. Despite the dramatic name, the basic idea is surprisingly simple. If nature did not create enough pathways, engineers would make new ones. Shaped explosive charges first create tiny openings in the steel casing and surrounding cement. These perforations connect the well to the rock. Then, a specially designed fluid is pumped down the well at extremely high pressure. The pressure becomes great enough to create thin fractures in the surrounding rock. These are thin, engineered fractures, not giant underground caverns. The moment pumping stops, the rock naturally tries to close again under the immense weight above it. So engineers add something remarkably simple. Sand. Millions of tiny grains travel with the fluid into the fractures. When the pressure is released, those grains become tiny spacers, holding the fractures slightly open, just enough for oil to begin flowing. Hydraulic fracturing unlocked oil and gas once considered uneconomical. But it brings real risks: water use, well integrity failures, methane leakage, wastewater handling, and induced seismicity linked mainly to deep wastewater disposal. Those risks demand careful construction, monitoring, and regulation. Even with advanced drilling, water injection, hydraulic fracturing, and decades of innovation, a significant amount of oil often remains trapped underground. Some droplets cling stubbornly to the rock. Others become isolated inside microscopic pores that no pathway ever reaches. Eventually, the cost of recovering those last barrels becomes greater than their value. So a field may be abandoned, while much of the remaining oil stays underground. The fuel in an ordinary gas station began as droplets trapped inside pores too small to see. Which means the greatest challenge in oil production was never simply finding oil. It was understanding the rock, because oil doesn't wait inside giant underground lakes. It hides inside a microscopic maze built by nature over millions of years. Every barrel produced is the result of engineers manipulating pressure, predicting hidden flow paths, and, when necessary, persuading solid rock to let go. The next time you hear someone say, "They just pump oil out of the ground," remember what is happening below. The surface pump is only one part of a much larger underground system. The real work happens thousands of meters below the surface, where physics, geology, and engineering work together to squeeze oil out of what appears to be solid stone.